Hi people, we're going back to a 2023 style video, this time talking about the Pope. You see, in 2023, if you watch me, remember I did more of like highlight style videos about like current events and culture. Like if you remember, I used to do like react content. I talked about like the RCTA stuff on TikTok, and I watched like, I think it was a Vice video on Korea and like their Gamergate era. That's what type of stuff I was on, you know? I've definitely gotten away from that stuff. I do love like TikTok drama and stuff, but I don't even know how commentary YouTubers find like random stuff on TikTok. I don't know. I guess you would just have to live on TikTok, which I'm definitely not going to do. I in 2024 I tried to do more like big impactful videos, and so I kind of got away from that, but sometimes it is nice to just, you know, get back to the basics. Although this video might also be pretty long because I just am incapable of making a short video anymore, if I'm being quite honest with myself. This is a 7-page outline. This ain't gonna be quick, okay? But also on this channel for the past few months, we've been talking way too much about anime, and I'm not trying to make you guys think I'm Mugiwara no Goofy, because girl, I'm not. This ain't an anime channel, so if you think it is, sorry to burst your bubble. But we don't just talk about anime, I talk about a bunch of other stuff too. I have just been, Wano made me obsessed with One Piece. Okay, it's Wano's fault. It's Wano's fault. It's Oda's fault for making Wano, because it just made me obsessed with One Piece. Girl, I want the One Piece Labubu's. I want the Wano manga set. Girl, I want every manga set, but girl, I'm obsessed. I have One Piece derangement syndrome. I bought a freaking Wano poster that's gonna go on my wall. I do have, as you can see, I have Luffy. But getting back on track, Pope Francis, if you didn't know, passed away on April 21st, 2025, and he was quite an interesting figure. He held the highest position in the Catholic Church for more than a decade, and it wasn't until his death that I learned he was kind of based. While he was alive, people joked about him being woke, mainly because he acknowledged gay people existed. Also, girl, happy Pride! Oh my god, happy Pride month! Let's go! I know I got some dolls that watch me. I'm sure the gays watch me, you know, I'm sure. So happy Pride, girl. Happy Pride! Yay! But after his death, I learned that he did much more than just to acknowledge that gay people shouldn't go to hell. That contributed to this image of open-mindedness, which may leave an unfulfilled hole in the papacy. I'm kind of late to the game. Okay, there was a lot of drama like after his death about who will be the next pope, but we're just gonna skip all that because, like I said, I'm late to the game as always. Girl, I was in college, okay? I might post in the Discord. I'm just scared of posting my animation stuff because it's like I don't like anything I do, but I might post it in the Discord. But girl, I was just working on two short films at once, and it was a whole thing, and so I have been late to the game. Okay, that's why I haven't really been uploading recently. But the new pope is here, and he's American. Oh god. They didn't pick my Filipino king, Luis Tagle, but instead a centrist. It's really interesting because when I was talking to people about the new pope being American, a lot of people assumed he would be more progressive simply because he was American. I really don't know why Americans have this view of themselves as if we are just the progressive bastions of the world, because whenever I hear someone's American, I immediately think they're not going to be progressive. So it's an interesting dichotomy because Americans naturally have a lot of reactionary sentiment, but simply because we have like same-sex marriage, girls be thinking that we're like like I said, the progressive bastions of the world, when we're not. Okay. But Jose Casanova, a senior fellow at the Berkeley Center, said Pope Leo the 14th was chosen because he's the best candidate to unify the church today. He's a centrist. That's what he means. Now I was hesitant to make this video because I feel like most leftists and people in my audience are probably not, well, I'm not religious either, but most of you are probably agnostic or Reddit atheist and just despise religion in its entirety. So the idea of me or watching a video that has anything to do with religion may make you repulse in fear, but I find none of this will be about Catholicism at all, because I'm not Catholic. I don't even know anything about regular Christianity. I tried to read the Bible when I was like 7, and I was like, I don't know what the freak is going on. And it's boring as hell. I couldn't get past the first few pages. Okay, so I know nothing about that. This is purely about the politics of the situation and how it's almost a reflection of wider global politics and the way that the world is heading. We have this more progressive figure, Pope Francis, who was traded out after his death for a more moderate one, instead of going for, like I said, my Filipino king, Luis Tagle, who was pretty much exactly like Pope Francis, if not more progressive, but instead they chose someone that wouldn't rock the boat too much. I think it's also important to remember when thinking about civil rights and progressive politics that actually a lot of the civil rights leaders historically have been religious. A lot of them have been Jewish. If we think about MLK and Nat Turner, they're Christian. Also, Malcolm X was Muslim. A lot of civil rights leaders and people that were at the forefront of progressive politics were religious. So if you are one of those people that is just like, I hate religious people, I implore you to remember that religion is just a tool, and some people use it in very disgusting ways, and other people use it to, get out of slavery and stuff. But there's been drama with the reception of American hogs to the new pope, and I also want to explore the impact of Pope Francis himself and what it means to have one less progressive figure in this increasingly more depressing world. But before we get to any of that, I'm gonna ask you to subscribe. Like I said, I've been saying for a long time, girl, my goal is 7K. The goal for the entire year was like 16K. I don't think that's gonna happen, but it's okay to be delusional sometimes. I also have TikTok, I have Instagram, I have Patreon, I have Discord, where you can talk to your fellow community members. On Patreon, you can see exclusive content, how I make videos just like this from start to finish. Girl, I am so back to be in this room, because having a roommate, I have to plan around when I do my videos. It's so exhausting, but now I can just rip them. No more roommates until next year. But like I said, Pope Leo was picked to appeal to everyone. But honestly, no shade, I feel as if he might be a little less successful in doing that in comparison to someone like Francis. But maybe I'm just bitter about Tagle not being picked. In a 2012 address, Leo expressed concern that Western culture promotes enormous sympathy for beliefs and practices that are at the odds with the gospel. He has also denounced teaching about gender during his stay in Peru, but supports migrants and climate change just like his predecessor. He voted in the Republican primary elections as recently as 2024, but denounced Trump's deportations to CCOT. There's also, I think the BBC reported that a Twitter account that might be related to him also denounced contraception, which is just, to me, that's a weird position. I don't know when Jesus said you can't use contraception, but maybe that was a thing, I don't know. But like most Americans, his politics are all over the place. Like I said, he voted in the Republican primaries. He's kind of a hog himself. The American hogs, the MAGA, are also coming after him, calling him American, but not American first. There's this really interesting BBC article that talked about this entire situation. See, this is whenever right-wingers are fun, okay? Whenever their opinions are inconsequential and don't, bring about new world fascism, neo-fascism. That's whenever they're at their best, is whenever they are irrelevant and I can laugh at them. While Trump has said Pope Leo's election was a great honor, a lot of his allies disagree. Steve Bannon, who I'm sure you all know who Steve Bannon is. I think he was like a former advisor, am I correct, for Trump in his last presidency, I believe. But supposedly he's also a Catholic. I mean, we already know he's like a alt-right gremlin. But he said it is shocking to me that a guy could be selected to be the Pope that had the Twitter feed and the statements he's had against American senior politicians. Laura Loomer called Leo a total Marxist, just like Pope Francis. But like I said, their opinions in the Catholic community overall are irrelevant because Pope Leo has one major support with American Catholics. Chicagoan Catholics aired disappointment with Trump and said they hoped Leo would follow in the path of his predecessor, Pope Francis. Surprisingly, to me, what I found is that 78% of Catholics support Francis, even though the majority of them are right-leaning. And I'm sure Leo himself will be fine. I don't know. Like I said, he seems much more of a hog than Pope Francis was, but who ultimately cares? I don't know. I don't know what to feel about that. Pope Francis himself, if we were to talk about his legacy and unpack that, he put so much distance between himself and his predecessors. Previous popes dwelled on reactionary cultural war issues, or just previous church leaders in the Catholic world in general, focused a lot more on reactionary cultural war issues like abortion and birth control. But as soon as Francis entered the papacy, he staked his claim as a man of the people. When asked who is Jorge Mario Bergoglio, I don't know how to say that, I'm so sorry, that's his birth name, he admitted he was a sinner, which was unprecedented. It was this admission that the Pope was human and not infallible from criticism. For a long time, Catholics were only known for their don'ts. Don't be gay, don't have an abortion, don't get a divorce. Lee told CNN, Francis unlocked a different kind of Catholicism in the public square. He was somebody who appealed to non-Catholics and Catholics. He was just a decent person. It was a sign of humility that marked the legacy he would leave on the church. He intentionally rejected the lavish lifestyle also previous popes had. He opted for white robes instead of the lavish red counterparts. Even his name was a conscious choice. If you don't know popes, whenever they become the Pope, they choose a different name. And he chose to name himself after Saint Francis of Assisi. I should have looked this up because I don't know how to pronounce nothing related to this. But he was a figure who represented a care for the poor and advocated for peace. Pope Francis lived in a modest guest house in Vatican City instead of the customary papal apartments. He had a Ford Focus instead of the luxury cars of his predecessors. Every choice he made was a clear show of humility to say his job wasn't to be above the laity, but to embrace them and lead them. In a 60-minute interview, Francis was actually asked about his progressive temperament, and this is what he had to say. When informed that some conservative bishops in the US had complained he was shifting church doctrine in a liberal direction, he responded by saying the term conservative can be defined as someone who clings to something and does not want to see beyond that. It's a suicidal attitude, he added, because one thing is to take tradition into account, to consider situations from the past, but quite another is to be closed up inside a dogmatic box. And he challenged that dogmatic box every chance he got. He denounced Trump's demonization of non-white immigrants. When a refugee boat sank on a Mediterranean island, he went there and celebrated Mass on an altar constructed of refugee boats. He elevated the issue of climate change, denounced unshackled capitalism, pushed for financial transparency within the Vatican, and, as I alluded to, he took on an unorthodox stance some of the church's most historically targeted individuals. Early in his papacy, he proclaimed, if someone is gay and he searches for the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge? He also said that atheists can go, a similar thing as he said to gay people he was like, I don't see why they can't go to heaven. On one occasion, he met with queer church members from the New Ministry, which is somewhere in America, and joked and laughed with them for nearly an hour, which was 4 times as much time as they were promised. It was supposed to be like a 10-minute meeting, and they ended up sitting there and laughing for like 50 minutes. As a symbol of his mission to outreach, Francis requested migrants, prisoners, trans people, and the homeless be a part of his final guard. And arguably his most steadfast dedication was to the Palestinian people, whom he reached out to nearly every day. Prior to Israel's onslaught after October 7th, there were 1,200 Christian Palestinians who lived in Gaza. But over the past 18 months, those numbers have obviously dwindled as Israel carries out its genocide. At this point, honestly, with them doing their starvation campaign, it's kind of moving towards a Holocaust at this point. To the Palestinian people, though, Pope Francis was known as Baba Francis, or Grandfather Francis in Arabic, and with how much contact he made sure to keep, he almost was kind of like a grandfather to them. George Anton, who is sheltering in Gaza's Holy Family Church compound, in an interview with the German publication DW, stated Pope Francis stayed in constant contact. He made every effort to reach each of us by phone from the very beginning of the war until the day before his death. He remained a daily presence in our lives. He never forgot us. Gabriel Romanelli, the Argentine priest who serves the Holy Family Parish, said, "He called us daily, even on the darkest days under bombardment, when people were being killed and wounded around us. Because of the difficult situation in Gaza, it would take 3 or 4 hours of trying before the call finally got through, but he never gave up until he reached us." When Gazans felt abandoned and isolated from the outside world, they always knew Pope Francis was thinking about them. He was one of the most vocal advocates for the poor and marginalized, Abu Daoud 19 told DW. He consistently opposed war and called for peace and a ceasefire in Gaza and around the world. Like I said, I feel like this story is almost a parable for the way the world is heading. Progressive voices are being constantly snuffed out and traded for either moderate or right-wing ones. And let's be honest, when it comes to making a change in the world, there really isn't much daylight between the two. David Gibson, the director of the Center on Religion and Culture at Fordham University in New York City, wrote in an essay that Francis became an increasingly lonely moral voice in a world that was being engulfed by nationalism, disinformation, and xenophobia. A world without a pope like Francis will in some ways resemble a Hobbesian dystopia without a prophet pointing to our better angels or a simple, sensible idealist showing a better way. Now I ask you, are we entering that dystopia? As the world leans into its worst urges, hateful rhetoric, fascist sentiment, disinformation, what impact do you want to leave behind? And what do you need to achieve it now before it's far too late? That'll be all for me. Like I said, we've been covering too much anime. I actually have some more anime videos in the works, but I just wanted a break, okay? I still want to make my silent voice video. Like I said, Gaza right now, Israel's doing a starvation campaign on the Gazan population, and that reminded me so much of Wano, for those of you that have watched Wano. If not, this is kind of a spoiler. I watched this one, I think it was on Channel 4. They were talking about this little girl named Yara and how she had to go and get food every day, and she would come back really disappointed whenever she didn't get food for her family, and it freaking broke my heart. And it reminded me so much of Otama, how she is literally being starved and she freaking gives her rice to Luffy. Whenever she finally has red bean soup, she's like, oh my god, this is amazing. And Luffy is like, I want to make this your life every day. Literally, I love Wano. It's so good. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. Like, when I heard that, I'm like, oh my god, it's just so beautiful. Like, you don't understand. Luffy said, I want to make that your reality. You're gonna have red bean soup every day. Like I said, that situation is so much alike. But I worry by the time I get around to making the Wano video, it will have been far too late. And I hope for the best that Israel will end its blockade on food, because it's just a special, everything they've done up to this point is freaking evil, but it is a special type of evil. I might honestly put a donation link or something in a way that you can give to Palestine in this video, because it's just a special type of evil to starve people. At the very least, I want you guys to be aware of it if you can. I'll try and find a good, reputable place you can donate. It takes me a while to make these One Piece videos, but I want you guys to at least be aware that that is happening and going on. And I'll still talk about when I end up making the Wano video, but that might take a while. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I would like to say thank you also to my Patreon members, my YouTube members. All of you are amazing. And I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye!